All right, Bulldogs. I did a short Instagram video about taxes, and I wanted to actually double down on this because people got upset about this. They got upset about my idea of society, thinking that it's dumb. It doesn't work that way. And this isn't really related. I don't know. This is sort of just a fun philosophical type of conversation because I know that a lot of you guys like to engage in these thoughts. However, I do think that it is important to understand some economics and how things work and really what your current situation is, right? And again, I'm not a person that's pessimistic that's going to say, oh, fight against the power and fight against the man, but you should try to strive to create as much autonomy in your life. In order to do that and to have that sovereignty in your life, you have to understand the constraints which you are under. And so this is a pretty big preface for this. You should really read the book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World by Harry Brown. Really, really good book. Excellent book. However, let's jump into the topic. So what I wanted to talk about is, this is my idea. So if I were the ruler of the world, if I had the power to do so, what I would do, okay, I would get rid of all taxes, all taxation in your lifetime. No sales tax, no property tax, no income tax. And I would create one tax that is 100% tax, and that would be the death tax. When you die, I would make it so that everything you own goes to the common good, right? Whether you say that's a government or system, even if you want to take our existing system, let's say in the United States with our government system in taxpayer funded, social programs and whatnot, which I tend to disagree with as a libertarian, but that's fine. If you say, okay, well, we have to have these things, and again, I can make some arguments for why that's not the case. For A New Liberty by Rothschild, if you read that, you can understand that, and there's plenty of stuff that you can read about that. But that's not the point. Okay, my point is that I would abolish all taxes in your lifetime, and then on death, you wouldn't be able to pass anything down. You would have to give it back. And there's a couple of reasons for this and some principles behind this. And a lot of people look at this, and at a surface level, they're like, "That's stupid, John, and that's a violation of my rights. And I would love to pass down my stuff. And why shouldn't I be able to do that?" And people will get around this and all kinds of stuff like this. But I want to address that's stupid, John, because that just shows a high degree of ignorance, because it's not stupid. Okay, let me tell you why it's not stupid. Okay, in your lifetime, you're going to pay a lot of taxes. All right, if you live in the United States, I mean, really most of the world now, but for example, me in the United States, doing fairly well. My average tax rate is around 30%. Let's say, okay, and not only is it, that's just my income tax, but I pay sales tax. Okay, I pay property tax on property I already own, and various other taxes, but those are the main taxes. So you could really say that of the money that I make, about 50% of it is taxed. Okay, now think about how much in my life that sets me back, how much of a handicap that is if 50% of what I create, I get to keep. Okay, now when you think about compounding interest and you think about investments and what you could do with that other 50% to increase your wealth, what you would see really quickly is that the taxation in your lifetime makes it really difficult to become wealthy. In fact, if you had no taxation in your lifetime, if you didn't have any kind of property tax, any kind of income tax, any kind of taxes that you had to pay sales tax, you would be able to do a lot more with your money. You'd be able to live on a lot less money, and you'd be able to expand that money and that capital and compound the interest on that at a lot greater rate, a much more rapid rate. You'd be able to do that. And so what would happen is that, yes, it would be true that you would not be able to pass on your wealth to your children or future generations, and what you had built up would you might say go to waste. Okay, but what also would be true would be that it would be a level playing field, that everyone would start from zero and everyone would have the opportunity to grow and to reach their potential because they wouldn't be handicapped by taxation. And you might not think, if you're not making a lot of money, you might not think that taxation is a handicap to you. All right. Again, I call it theft, but whatever. All right. But it is. So the way that I like to look at this is there's an economic ladder. All right. And in this economic ladder, there are rungs on this ladder. And there's a lot of people that want to rearrange these rungs in different fashions, okay, depending on where they're at. And what you'll find is that the optimal way for the rungs to be put on the ladder, in my opinion, is that they're evenly distributed, right? And the reason why, and what I'm saying by this is that, if you understand the analogy, the rungs on the ladder is the ease on climbing up to a higher economic situation, right? And so if you think about it, what happens a lot of times, and what happens with taxes, is that what it's doing is it's sort of lowering the rungs on the ladder. All right, so you're taking the rungs that are in the middle of the ladder, and you're moving them to the bottom to make it easier for people to reach the middle of the ladder. But then when they reach the middle, there's a bunch of empty spots where there should be rungs, and it's very hard to get up to the top of the ladder where there's more rungs again. So that's why you have this division of the wealthy and the poor, is because we have constructed society in such a way that through taxation, we make it so that if you're not doing very well, it's easier for you to do okay. But if you're doing okay, it's very hard for you to do really well. And if you're doing really well, it's really easy for you to continue to do even better. Okay. And so that's kind of how that distribution is, right? And so there's some people that, it could be even advisable to move the rungs on the ladder up, so that at the very lowest stages where it is kind of easiest, that you don't need as many rungs. You can get up to sort of the middle area, and then once you get there, then it's easy to climb to the top of the ladder. I could see that particular configuration, but the whole point of this, and one thing that becomes a waste here, is that when you die, okay, if you are able to give your wealth to someone else, right, to your children, it sort of creates an unfair advantage in that case, and you're sort of like that policy of passing on inheritance is really moving all the rungs up to the top. Very, very, it's penalizing the middle and the low, right? Because if you have a lot of money, or if someone has a lot of money, then they can pass that fortune on, and it's not based on merit, right? And so a lot of people get upset about this, and I understand it. I mean, a lot of people said, well, you don't have a family, you're not a father. Yes, I do have a family, and I am a father, and I don't want to pass money on to my daughter. I don't. Okay. Maybe a small amount to be able to, like, if she wanted to be an artist or something to sustain her, or something like that, so that she wouldn't have to worry about those things in life. But I want her to create her own path in life and to work her way. And I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think that a lot of people, why do you want to pass on your wealth? Because you feel like, what, you need to have a legacy because you feel like you need to become more valuable even after you're dead? That, like, is that really the thing? You might say, well, I care about my children. If you care about your children, then you would care for them to make their own way in the world. It is not a significant penalty for them to start at the bottom just like everybody else does. In fact, it is an advantage to do that if you truly care about them, care about their character. And yeah, you can make arguments against that, and I understand that not everyone really thinks this through, or that you might have a different opinion on that. That's totally fine. But my whole point in kind of making this video is that when I made that Instagram reel, and I guess I did a short on YouTube, and people were like, this is dumb, I was like, I guess you don't really understand. You don't really understand all the taxes that you're paying and how difficult it is right now in order to climb up the social and economic ladder. It is very, very difficult. And the reason why is primarily due to taxation. Okay. If you did not have income tax, if you didn't have property tax, if you didn't have sales tax, you would be able to do a lot more with your money, and you'd be able to build wealth at a much more massive rate. I mean, believe me, if I could not pay taxes, I could accumulate a massive amount of wealth rapidly, and I can show anyone how to do that because it's not that hard. Taxes sort of create a huge amount of friction, right? If you think about it, in anything that you're doing, let's say that you're getting water from a well, okay? If if the bucket had a big hole in it and 50% of the water came out of the bucket when you scoop the water from the well, how easy would it be for you to get water from that well? It would be difficult. You would be working against. You'd be like, I should fill the hole in the bucket before I try to do this, and that is the case with investing, with trying to grow your money. And you could say 401ks and stuff like that, where they're tax deferred, and sure, that's fine, but I'm talking about just in your daily life. Like, how much more money would you have? How much more would you be able to invest if you didn't have to pay the tax, if you didn't have to, live off of that? So that's kind of the idea behind that. And then there's a bigger principle behind this as well, which is that principle of the idea that, you should start with zero, because when you're born into this world, and this is kind of, and the reason why I like this idea, this philosophy in this case, is because it sort of joins two separate philosophies that have merit, right? So if you take the purely capitalist viewpoint, okay, which I don't actually even agree with. A lot of people think that I would, but I don't. Which is that, it's just everything for profit, right? It doesn't matter. Like, I own this, I get this, whatever. And the problem that people complain about the purely capitalist thing is that, what right should you have to have these resources, right? And again, this gets to a dangerous place where people get extremely communist or socialist, but it comes from this feeling which I can empathize with, which is, why should you get to have the factory? Why should you get to have this? And then, they would say exploiting the labor of other people. I would say that that's not the case as an entrepreneur, but the case can be made is, why did when you're born onto this planet, okay, everything's already owned. That's kind of a problem, right? You're kind of born a slave, right? So why should it be that, an equitable sort of distribution would be, when you're born, you get a share of the earth, of the resources, of the total wealth of the earth? That would make sense to me, right? If you think about it, right? Why should it be that some people are born with a lot more and some people are born with a lot less? It doesn't really make sense, because it's not based on them. They haven't done anything. It's just what they happen to be born into, the family that they've been born into. And that kind of generational wealth, I think, is a plague. I think it's a plague on society. I think it's a plague on people. I don't think it helps people. I think that it is a problem. And so you've kind of got these two viewpoints, right? And what I would say is that it sort of serves both, right? Because as a capitalist, what do I want to do? I don't want to pay taxes. I don't want to give away my money. I earn my money. I want to keep it. I want to be able to use it for my utility and my value. I don't want it to be taken from me or stolen from me, as I would call it. Okay, fair. All right. As a socialist, what do I care about? Well, I care about equality and fairness and an equal distribution of things, and that some people shouldn't have more than others. Okay, and there's some merits to that viewpoint as well. But what marries them together is that you have an equal opportunity, and not necessarily an equal distribution, but an equal opportunity. And what gives you an equal opportunity is leveling the playing field. And so based on that, it doesn't make sense that you should be able to take stuff with you, right? If you get to play the game of life and you start with some distribution, which comes from, so you've got some share of the earth, let's say, and by taxing the people that die 100% of their wealth, and then giving it to the people that are born, essentially, to give them something to start with, that's a fair way to start everyone sort of on that equal playing field. But then the advantage that you have in life now is that it is all up to you. You're not penalized. You don't have a bucket with a hole in it. Okay. And so if you don't have a bucket and a hole with it, you can make the most of it, and you don't have to worry about that. And so it just makes a lot of sense from a philosophical standpoint that we would operate more like this if we were going to have some kind of taxation. And you could even say that there's no taxation at all. And again, that's an extreme libertarian viewpoint, and I actually kind of agree with that. But regardless, this might even be a better solution. Again, it's not like I have the power to implement these things or whatnot, but these are some thought experiments to think about these things. Because, and the reason why, another reason why I think this is important, I think there's two reasons, and then I'll end this video. The first one is that a lot of people really don't understand the other side, right? A lot of people are Democrat or Republican, or they are socialist or they are capitalist or whatever it is, and they just attack and vilify the other side. Whereas most people are coming at things from what they believe is right and what they believe is the correct thing. Some is based on what they think, what they prioritize, which is they might prioritize, let's say, the feelings or of people, and some people might prioritize the principles that create the justice in the law or the equality in people. And so when you sort of think about these things, it is important to think about why does someone, for example, what is a socialist viewpoint or a communist viewpoint? What is their chief complaint? And I would say that it is that they feel like life is unfair because there is a unfair distribution of resources. Okay. And I think there's a valid point to that because, hey, if you have generational wealth and people just inherit money, what did they do to earn that? Like why should this person be more privileged, if I hate that word, but than another person? Why should that be the case? It really shouldn't be the case. Okay, and then you have to understand the capitalist viewpoint. The capitalist viewpoint is saying that, look, hey, if I use my hands, if I do labor, if I make stuff, you shouldn't have the right to that. I should have the right to that. If I want to give it to you, that's fine, but you shouldn't take it from me, right? And so both of these are valid points. Okay. And so a resolution of both of them is, like I said, is what I agree. That's why I would say, or is what I came up with in terms of a 100% death tax. And yeah, there's all kinds of problems with that. And how would you implement it? And could people pass stuff on before they die? And I mean, if you really wanted to figure it out, I'm sure that you could in some way. But it's the idea, it's the principle of it that's important. And then the second thing about this, which I think is important, is just understanding. The higher level principle of I only want what I've earned, what is mine, right? And I think that if you're thinking in terms of I'm creating wealth and I'm going to pass that wealth on, you're not really thinking in terms of only, you're thinking of that maybe for yourself, but you're depriving your children of that same pleasure, right? And I speak from a perspective of having coached several trust fund babies who led miserable lives and felt like they were severely injured by their parents by giving them great wealth. Now, would they give up that wealth? Of course not, because how can you when you're in that place, right? Because you could say, oh, well, they could just give it up if they don't want it. They give it to me. That's not the case, because once you're in that situation, then you haven't learned the ability to appreciate the things that you've accomplished on your own or to attain some degree of self-sufficiency. So I think there's a principle in that, just to think about this and to understand that you really shouldn't want what's not yours, what you haven't earned. And if you do, and if you want to pass that on, then there's a problem there, because it's not just about the money. It's not just about having the things. It's about having earned the things, because that is where the real value is in it. And again, if we're looking at what makes sense, what are we trying to accomplish in life? We're trying to build ourselves. We're trying to build our characters. We're trying to advance the inner. I was reading, or my daughter was reading, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and one of the things that she had a problem with was that he said that you should not really focus on the external goals, but the internal goals. And when you accomplish the internal goals, then the external goals sort of become a game that you can play. And she got kind of upset by that. I want to do this. I want to focus on these external goals. And I think that is it's some wisdom that he said there, right? Because that's really what you're trying to do. And so a lot of the problems that people have in terms of money and unfairness and all these things are focused on the external goals. They're looking at things from that perspective. But that's why I like this approach, because I believe that it balances the two. It makes things fair from an external perspective, and also equals levels of playing field from an internal perspective. So I will see you tomorrow.